All right, guys, so next we are going to dive deeper into user settings. Okay, remember to find this, you need to go to your menu, go to settings, and go to user settings. Now, I introduced this briefly in an announcement last week because some students were having some trouble with their mouses, and you needed to come in here to view controls to make adjustments. Once I realized that some students were having some issues, I thought it would bear some review of this and just giving you a sense of where some items are in case you have trouble down the road. Okay. So the first thing I want to point out is you have this option for use VBOs, and it should be checked. It's faster way of rendering. It correlates to rendering speed. It's a techie sort of thing. I'm not an IT person, so some of this I cannot speak very, very deeply to. However, if you see any kind of black flickering, it may mean that you don't have the graphics card necessary. And so it's recommended that you turn it off if you're experiencing that kind of issue. Okay. Anti-aliasing is something that's really common in gaming. It corresponds to speed and it smooths curves and edges. So if you are following along with the practice assignments and your Garmins and avatars just don't look as smooth as mine, you'll want to come in here and make some adjustments. Generally, if you're seeing things that are jagged and things that just won't smooth out, it may mean that you just don't have a high enough resolution, or your screen doesn't have high enough resolution to actually process the graphics. And you'll see that this defaults to 16. You can come in here and play with this and reduce it. If you're having if you're having issues, normally 16 is perfect. They don't recommend that you make any kind of adjustments to it unless you are having issues. Okay. Under view controls, again, this was the area that some of you needed to come to make your mouse work. You'll see that there are a number of presets here, and mine is set to user preset because I had to customize something. But otherwise, if you're on a PC, you can use regular mouse and it should work just fine. If you're on a Mac and you're using a Magic Mouse, you can come down here and select Magic Mouse. Again, there are also some other options here related to other tools that you may use in other 3D programs. So, for instance, you could select tablet if you normally use a Wacom tablet, or if you're trying to use your laptop's trackpad, which I do not recommend. I'm using it right now to record videos, and it's not very user-friendly, okay? But again, mine is set to user preset because I made some adjustments. So remember, you're going to be using your left click, your right click if you don't have a scroll button. So for instance, I use a Magic Mouse, and I can scroll up and down, but I don't have a scroll button. So to do any kind of panning, I have to actually use my left mouse button plus the Alt key. Okay, so again, doing that on my trackpad is not super, super easy. Okay, if you have other preferences, if you've used other programs, if you've just gotten used to doing things a different way, again, come in here and you can change things around as you need to. I do want to point out down here, you've got this thing called Axis Constraint Key. Basically, it is going to constrain, just like in Illustrator or Photoshop, if you hold Shift, it constrains proportions. So in this case, it will constrain angles. So if maybe I've hit the two keys, so I've got a perfect straight-on view of my avatar, and I want to rotate at the exact same angle all the way around her, I can hold Shift, and again, it'll just make sure I'm on the exact same axis as I go around the avatar's body. Okay. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about here? Your viewpoint down here at the bottom, you're going to see that it defaults to 0, 0 and a camera distance of 8,000. This is all editable. So if you really wish that the default distance was less or greater, you can come in here and change that number. If you wish that your default position was maybe higher up on her body or lower, whatever the case may be, you can come in here and change those numbers as well. Okay. I believe that was everything I wanted to make sure I absolutely hit. In terms of shortcuts, you can set some of these. If I scroll up, you'll see, for instance, if I want to set something really specific for editing, maybe it's my undo, I can delete what's currently here and then set a keyboard shortcut here by simply clicking the key. So if I wanted to change this to the letter L for some reason, all I would need to do is hit the letter L. If I wanted the keyboard shortcut to be LP because they're really close together on the keyboard, I would need to click those two keys at the exact same time. And that's how they get the Control plus Z. In my case, it would be L plus P. Okay. I do want to warn you that if the keyboard shortcut already exists for something else, you'll have to delete that keyboard shortcut. You'll have to come in here and find it and then set this to what you want after you have made that correction. Okay. Again, Clo will not let you set it if it's in use someplace else. In terms of your user interface, you can come in here and customize your units of measure. So in the United States, we use inches. If you are from another country and you prefer to use something else, you can come in here and reset this to something like centimeter or millimeter. Okay. For your button widths, if you're comfortable with using lines, you can leave that turned on. If you choose to turn that off, it's going to default to whatever your unit of measure is. So most of the merchandisers in the room are not going to be as familiar with lines, and they may have a little bit more comfort with saying, you know, I know that this button is an inch wide, and I can visualize that because I know what an inch looks like. Okay. You'll see down here at toolbar, you can customize where your toolbar sits. And I'm going to go ahead and set mine to the left for my 3D toolbar, and I'm going to set my 2D toolbar to the right side. And when I exit this, you'll see what that looks like. Clo actually does recommend, if you're on a laptop, one particularly with a small screen, they find that users really do find left and right to be more comfortable. And I just want to see what that looks like. I find that sometimes my tools feel really crowded up here, and I'm always closing maybe one of my windows to access all of the tools I want to be able to see more readily. Okay, so consider doing that. You'll see here that you can also change the fonts. The font family's default is Tahoma, but maybe you want it to look like something else. You can go in and customize that as well. Okay. Below this, you'll see that you have 3D. Okay, and again, my windows are all defaulting to being scrolled down for some reason. For 3D, you'll see that everything, again, in 3D is made out of mesh, and you have a choice between triangular mesh or quad, which will look like rectangles. When it comes to fabric and getting the drape that you're really going to want to see here, you're going to want to leave that set to triangles. You may get to a point where you're building something specific that, you know, triangles are just not necessary, and you believe that quad would work better. You can come in and edit that. Okay. Here under arrangements, you'll see default arrangement shape type is curved. You can change that to flat. And if you recall back to last week's exercise where we used the arrangement points on the avatar, and we placed some of the pattern pieces against her body, pieces were curving up and over her shoulder or around the side of her torso. That's what that is in reference to, okay? And that, I think, is really helpful because it allows you to place the pattern more closely to the body. I think it gives you a better understanding of how it's going to fit. And best practice is just to leave that at curved. You will find in a future exercise that there are instances where keeping it flat is preferential, and this can be changed in several different areas. Okay. You'll see here your sync fold arrangement angle is set to on. This is something that can also be changed later if necessary in your property editor. Okay. Let's see what else is down here. Your gizmo The gizmo that we use that you have seen in all of the tutorials so far is the unified gizmo. And that gizmo means that I can move things up and down and back and forward and rotate in 3 different directions. And I also have access to the little yellow square in the center that allows me to just fluidly and organically move a pattern piece anywhere I'd like to, okay? If you have used other programs that use 3D, you might be more familiar with a divided gizmo. The thing with the divided gizmo, though, is you're going to see that you have to use keyboard shortcuts in addition. Again, at this point, I would not recommend it. It's just extra work. I think it would be a little bit confusing. But again, you know, this is where this lives, and I just want to make sure that you know where this stuff is. You'll see here under 2D, there is information about particle distance, which we will talk about more deeply in another video today. Particle distance basically is the distance between your object, actually, I'm sorry, particle distance is actually the space between the mesh vertices, okay? So the larger it is, the less information is used to create the fabric and the drape. The smaller it is, the more detail is there, so you get a more refined appearance. This defaults to 20, and that's really important to just keep for the time being, because a higher particle distance means that it will operate a little bit more quickly and more fluidly, and it will not tax your computer as greatly. When you go and move something into high res and you really need to see, you know, what does this fabric fit as well as I think it does, when you go into high res, it'll drop to 5. Okay. Offset 2D patterns. If you cut something, a pattern piece into 2 pieces, it just means it's going to put space between them. So no big deal there. Leave that on. Let's see, what else do I want to show? I'm not going to talk about modular configurator. Under default types or default files, I want to point out that your program autosaves at a set time interval. Okay, so as we continue to work with these files, and my file has actually been sitting open for a period of time, Clo is automatically saving this every 3 minutes. You can come in here and save, change that to a different number if you'd like to. Totally up to you, okay? You'll see here, Clo API is going to be referring to plugins. So if you have developed something that works with Clo, or you have found a plugin that you'd like to utilize, you'll see that you can add that. And then finally, you'll see that you can connect to Closet. So you can put in your own link here. However, they have recently changed this feature. It used to be that it would directly go into your account if you had set it up that way. It now drops you off at the login window. Okay, so for security purposes, it's going to do that. I just want to make sure very quickly. I feel like I went through user interface a little bit too fast. However, again, I believe I hit everything. And I did not mean to hit Super Mario. Where is Tahoma? Okay, I'm glad I saw that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this. And my computer is running slow. I did opt to change my toolbar, as you'll recall, and you'll see what this looks like. Okay, and I do think I prefer this. I think it's going to take me a little while to get used to it. However, because it's running vertically on the sides, you'll see all of my tools, for the most part, are open and active, and I can, you know, they're very accessible. There are a few more that are not visible to me, so I'll have to expand this just in some cases, but for the most part, everything that I'm going to need, okay, is available and present and easily accessible. Okay, all right, I'm going to stop there on user settings. I will be back to cover more Clo 3D.